Market Money for MMAfighting.com with some breaking news. UFC 232 is moving from Las Vegas to Los Angeles. The Nevada Athletic Commission will not license Jon Jones to fight on Saturday in Las Vegas due to an adverse drug test finding. So the show will go on the road from Las Vegas to the Forum in Inglewood, California. The California State Athletic Commission said it will indeed license Jon Jones to fight Alexander Gustafsson for the UFC light heavyweight title. There's a lot to unpack. Again, I'm here with Jed Mishu from MMAfighting.com. We're going to talk about just exactly what this means, the details involving this situation, what the adverse drug test even means, and the significance. Jed, we're just kind of finding out this information. What is going on in your estimation? How are you processing this news?
Honestly, this is just insane. Like it's always one thing with Jon Jones or another, and we're gonna get into it. I know that this is a thing that's already been, so it's not a new thing. But realistically, I'm not even entirely sure I understand what has happened. So like, I know that you're obviously a little more plugged in, especially with how commissions work and everything. So can you? I feel like it'd be helpful for everyone if you got into the nitty gritty here and told us kind of what's going down at a brass tacks level.
Yeah, that's a really good question because it's very hard to sum up in just a tweet or in a small news item. Basically, what is happening here is Jon Jones, there was an adverse finding in a drug test stemming from a December 9th sample collection. And the Nevada Athletic Commission is saying this is an adverse finding. They're considering it almost like a positive test. We can't let him fight on December 29th. He has to come before the commission for a hearing before we let him fight. And what USADA, the UFC's anti-doping partner, is saying, and what California, the commission, is saying, because they're going to let Jon Jones fight, he's not going to be sanctioned by either one of those bodies, is that this is the same substance that Jones tested positive for back in July 2017. It's the same thing. He has not ingested anything new since then. It's just the lingering residual substance, and it's a long name. It's a steroid metabolite, so we'll call it the metabolite. It's the lingering metabolite, the residuals from that July 2017 test. I spoke with CSAC executive officer Andy Foster just a few minutes ago, and he said that he considers Jon Jones a clean athlete. They talked to doctors, they talked to scientists, they talked to the lab director at Smyrtle, the WADA accredited lab in Salt Lake City, and everyone is saying to them that this is the same thing he tested positive for. This is what he was suspended 15 months for from USADA already. It's not anything new. It's just a lingering residual, and it's not going to cause any performance-enhancing effects. That is what USADA and CSAC, Andy Foster, the commission head, are saying right now. So they're going to let him fight, but Nevada is considering this pretty much, if not a positive drug test, an adverse analytical finding, and they want to have Jones before the commission before they let him fight again in their state.
All right, so I think the big question for me, kind of stemming from all that, is USADA's finding because they already knew about it? If this was an independent test, if he didn't have this history, was however his test rolled out, was that enough to get him popped kind of independently? Or is it one of those situations where it just was raised enough to maybe raise a red flag, but not actually warrant kind of further investigation? Kind of where are we on that?
That's a good question. So it was a USADA drug test because he has been drug tested. Jones has been drug tested 10 times this year by USADA, even during his suspension, which was 15 months, which was up at the end of October. And this was the one that came from the December 29th sample collection. It came up that he tested positive for that same substance, that same steroid metabolite from July 2017. And had he not tested positive before, there probably would have been cause to at least look at it again, to at least further analyze it. I don't know if it would have constituted, because it is a very small amount, USADA is saying it's a very trace amount, that it may not have led to a provisional suspension or a possible anti-doping violation, but certainly it would have raised some red flags and maybe caused some more testing because it is a small amount. But certainly what they're saying is this is already done. This is only in his system because he took it by accident in July 2017. It's not anything new. And Nevada is saying, well, they're pretty much saying, well, we don't know for sure. We need to look into this more. He can't fight in less than a week.
So, can you explain to me then, and for everybody else watching, kind of in my take, it feels like Nevada is maybe on top of things here. I mean, look, I'm on the record as not caring about steroid usage in MMA. I'm very pro using steroids, but if we have the rules and these items aren't allowed in your system, ostensibly for a reason, because you can't have that because it gives you an unfair advantage. Why is this amount so trace that it's not giving him an unfair advantage, but it is enough to, send off warning signs through the system?
I guess it's one of those things where if there is an X amount in the system, it's going to set off red flags. Like it will trigger that process to begin of them looking at the findings. But one other thing to note, Jed, too, also speaking to Andy Foster from the California Commission, he said John Jones flew to California over the weekend and he took another drug test, a urine test, and they got the sample back already. They got the result and he's clean. So as far as CSAC is concerned, he is a clean athlete. And it's all kind of coming oddly full circle because when he tested positive in July 2017, it was in California. It was in Anaheim in relation to the UFC 214 fight with Daniel Cormier. And CSAC fined him $205,000. They revoked his license, which only, by the way, got reinstated a week ago on December 10th, more than a week ago, December 10th. So it's all a very strange circumstance. But basically, Nevada is saying, hey, we don't know enough about this. We want to find out more information. We don't want to let him fight in a week. And USADA and CSAC are saying this is the same thing. He's already been punished. It's just a low-level trace amount still in the system that's not going to cause any kind of performance-enhancing effects.
All right, then my last big question for as far as we go about this particular bend of this story is, everyone knows the quote. John Jones' his statement, kind of following everything that's gone on, said that he was found with kind of a pinch of salt in a swimming pool. I am not an expert on this. I know that you know a little more than I. How is a pinch of salt in a swimming pool still creating these adverse reactions? With 17 months, positive test.
Good question. And it seems to me, according to what Jeff Nowitzki told reporters today in Las Vegas, that John Jones tested without this coming up already this year. But for some reason, it came back again in this test from December 9th, in the sample collection from December 9th. So he was clean, nothing came up, and then all of a sudden, again, it came up. And what Nowitzki told reporters was that they don't know enough about this metabolite. It could be something called pulsing, where it doesn't always show up in tests, and it kind of goes up and down. And sometimes it is recognized, sometimes it's not. It's basically a thing they don't quite understand yet. And I guess that's probably one of the reasons why Nevada is being cautious. They don't want him fighting in their state with all these things that maybe are confusing to some, and people are not 100% sure. But again, what CSAC and what USADA are saying and what the UFC is saying is that this is not going to cause any kind of performance-enhancing effects. And I guess that's why they're going along with the fight. But this is a very strange circumstance, Jed.
We can't know that. I mean, again, yeah. I don't care about performance-enhancing drugs, but if in one side of their mouth they're saying, we're not really sure what this does or why it's doing this, but on the other side they're saying, well, it's definitely not influencing him or affecting him in any way. This feels like a lot of doublespeak to me.
It's a very strange circumstance, and I guess we'll find out more about it. I really wonder how Alexander Gustafsson feels about this whole situation. It seems like, according to ESPN's Ariel Helwani, that he's on a 4-hour helicopter tour right now in the Grand Canyon. He may not even know this is going on. He has a title fight on Saturday in 6 days that's moving from one city to another. This whole situation is bizarre. One of the stranger stories in recent MMA history in a sport that has had some strange stories over the years.
Absolutely. And you bring up a great point. We should kind of shift into that, I think, at this point, because this is not just something that influences John Jones and Alexander Gustafsson, but I mean, there are 13 total fights on this card, not to mention the fans, everyone else around that. So I think let's start at the top. How do you feel about this for Gustafsson? I mean, like you said, in 6 days, he is transitioning from Las Vegas to California. I know he's been in Las Vegas for a few weeks now, kind of with all his final preparations. This is a big wrench being thrown into all his plans. And and I mean, we can't say for sure, obviously, at this point, but it seems that this decision was kind of a unilateral one by the UFC, and that he hasn't really been consulted, or anyone apparently, other than John Jones, I guess, and the commissions.
I mean, I would imagine that this is not great news for Gustafsson because, like you said, he has been in Las Vegas already. He's there. I I still think he'll probably sign up for this fight. I know he wants John Jones badly. They fought once before in 2013, and it was an ultra close fight, the hardest fight of John Jones' career. And Gustafsson believes he can beat John Jones. In fact, he thinks he beat him already back in 2013. So I'm sure he'll go along with this, but it can't be good news for him as a guy who's already been there. Probably has people coming in on his team from Sweden. This is not a person who lives nearby. He's bringing people from Europe over, and that goes for other people on the card as well. Megan Anderson, who's fighting Kat Zingano at UFC 232, said that she just found out from the internet. She had no idea that the fight she's preparing for on Saturday in 6 days is moving from one city to another, from one state to another. The whole situation is really strange, and I guess Dana White said today that tickets will go on sale for the Forum in Inglewood on Wednesday for UFC 232, and they're going to refund or at least try to find new tickets to the new location for people who have already bought tickets for UFC 232 at T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas. This is an absolute minefield of situations here that the UFC is kind of opening itself up to.
Yeah, silver lining, if you do live in the area, on Saturday, honestly, feels like you might be able to get a comp ticket with the way this is shaking down. But certainly for the other fighters,
and during Christmas week, no less. So they're putting tickets on sale the day after Christmas to fans in Southern California. This is absolutely bizarre. This whole situation is bizarre.
It is absolutely insane. And you mentioned Megan Anderson. Other fighters have already mentioned kind of how their plans are, being kind of upended on Christmas week. No end. Brian Kelleher, I know, has tweeted about it, saying that he had family and friends coming into Vegas. A bunch of fans have already jumped out and saying, hey, I had a holiday plan because this was around Christmas time. I'm flying into Vegas, and now I have to suddenly get another flight out to LA, get hotels, all that. This seems like a whole lot for maybe not worth the squeeze as far as I can tell here. Because, I mean, honestly, Mark, I kind of want to get your opinion here. This is not a this fight is, one of the biggest fights of the year. It's the return of John Jones. That's enormous for the UFC and for their product. But the co-main event is no slouch. Arguably the greatest women's mixed martial arts fight of all time. The first, UFC female champion versus champion fight. That is a super fight in its own right. Chris Cyborg, one of the top 10 draws in the UFC. Why not just say, all right, you know what? John Jones isn't cleared here. We're having trouble. Let's push that fight off to one of the early pay-per-views next year, and we'll just have Cyborg Nunes, headline this, and no worse for wear, really.
It's a very good question, and my only answer to that, and I don't know the answer from their perspective, but I can see them saying maybe something along the lines of, well, they probably disagree vehemently with Nevada's decision, and they feel like that John Jones should be allowed to fight in 6 days, and they were going to pull out all the stops to let them do that. Plus, it's the end of the year. I'm sure they were counting on this big payday coming in from that Jones Gustafsson fight, which, as good as Cyborg versus Nunes is, both those fights together on one card is a much bigger card than just one of them. It's a tough question, and again, they're doing something unprecedented, going back to UFC 12 when they could not actually fight in the city they were trying to fight in New York. They had to take the flight to Dothan, Alabama, I believe, or they had to go somewhere else. So it's kind of like that, only this is only one fighter situation causing that issue. Before, it was a legal situation where they actually could not legally fight in the state because MMA was illegal. This is another strange day in the world of this sport.
Yeah, absolutely uncharted waters here, honestly, and that's kind of why my reaction was immediately very whoa, and now I'm still just trying to grapple with just the economics of it, honestly, because as you mentioned, and I'm sure that is the ultimate reason, is that the idea of having a John Jones Chris Cyborg pay-per-view, that's going to close out their 2019 in a pretty big way. I think we both would imagine. And then losing that is maybe not as good financially, but kind of as we mentioned in passing, they've got to somehow sell out the Forum in 3 days immediately after Christmas. Like there are other financials kind of at work here, not to mention the fact that 25 other fighters have just been told in not as many words, but kind of just told that you don't really matter all that much. You are completely at the whims of whatever we want to do. This just feels like a really puzzling decision and kind of one I'm honestly way more interested in this card. It was a great card on paper, don't get me wrong, but the next few days are going to be really exciting to see how this shakes out.
I mean, and maybe this is not the case, and this is speculation, but maybe the UFC is sticking it to the Nevada Commission. They're like, you're not going to let John Jones fight. Well, we're not going to bring this big card to your state to get the revenue from taxes for this card. We're going to bring it across the border to California. So maybe they're saying that to the Nevada Commission. Maybe this is a message to them. The whole thing is bizarre. And by the way, for people who don't know the geography, it's not a huge distance between Las Vegas and Southern California. It's about a 4 hour and change car ride and a less than hour flight. But again, if accommodations have already been made and reservations have already been made, it's not fun to have to change them around. I mean, I did it myself. I was flying into Las Vegas on Tuesday and I had a hotel room. I had to cancel all that already. Luckily, I live in LA, so I can just stay home. But other people don't have that kind of luxury. They're coming from who knows where, out of the country. A lot of them probably. It's I can't underscore enough how strange this whole thing is.
Yeah, honestly, it's like the exact perfect distance to be bothersome. You know, if it was an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours away, that's the same as a commute in a lot of places, at least where I live. 4 hours is just long enough to where you really do have to upend all of your plans to now do something. So this is insane. Everything's insane. I'm glad it worked out for you though, Mark. Much simpler for you.
Much simpler for me. No plane ride on Christmas Day. But again, we hope everyone who is coming to Vegas figures things out and it's not too bad. And the UFC at least does something to transport the fighters from Vegas to LA this week before the fights. There's going to be a lot more news coming out of this, I'm sure, Jed, but we're going to wrap it up here. Stay posted to MMAfighting.com for more details and more follow-up stories about these continuing developments, I guess you could say, for UFC 232, which is now in Los Angeles, moving from Las Vegas, and John Jones is going to be able to fight, but there's still some questions about him and this adverse drug test finding. So we're going to wrap it up here. For Jed, I'm Mark. Stay posted at MMAfighting.com for further news.